Hello, this is Rachel Dorsey back again with a video, and today's video is going to be actually good old practical advice. Once again, I'm going to be referencing my laptop where I've written out my notes, and I've written them out in a lot of detail because this video is going to be longer and more comprehensive, but I really hope that you stick around for the full thing to get the full message. So today's topic is, how do I first bring up autism to parents if I suspect their child is autistic and the parent has no idea or is actively denying it? The first time I did this, I was incredibly nervous. I had no plan. I was initially going to talk to the parent in the clinic office, but the parent canceled, and getting to the office just wasn't going to happen, so I did it over the phone, and I left the parent feeling shocked and not believing me. After that, through experience, I formed an overall method. So first, why do we want to talk to parents about their child possibly being autistic? They might already be in early intervention or in school getting services, so then what's the point? Parents knowing that their child may be autistic or is actually autistic early on, but really when suspected at any age, helps provide parents with a framework with which they can understand their child, and in turn help the child understand themselves as they get older. That is the most important aspect. I'll not be talking about recommending a diagnostic evaluation, my thoughts on that, as the video would be just way too long. Although I do generally support an early diagnosis, but there are some caveats to that. Also, while this video is meant for professionals, I would love for parents of autistic children to comment about their own experiences if a professional first told them. Okay. When a parent is not suspecting autism at all, or they're actively denying it and thus perceiving it as this awful thing because of society's view of autism, it is understandably daunting for a professional to mention autism. I've heard a lot of SLPs not feel comfortable first bringing it up, so they don't. Or if they do, sometimes parents cry or yell or just leave the room, or kick the parent out of their house. I've heard various recommended strategies from SLPs. There's the old-fashioned sitting a parent down and explaining that the child displays X, Y, and Z, and these are red flags consistent with an autism diagnosis. There are SLPs who guide parents into making the connection so that parents are the first ones to say the word as opposed to the SLP. I've also heard this kind of modified compliment sandwich approach where the SLP talks about how great it is that the child said the word cup. Oh, but look, the child's not looking at the parent when they said it, and this is a possible sign of autism. Oh, but they could be wrong. They just don't want us to miss anything that could have a meaningful implication for future therapy plans. So to me, each of these approaches misses the ball completely. The most important part of first discussing autism with a family is not the way that you mention autism. It is their pre-existing view of autism and autistic traits. And what does society tell us about autism? All these bad things. The reason autism is so daunting to bring up to a family is that we as professionals know this. We know the social stigma. I would argue that a lot of professionals hold that stigma too, unfortunately. But even if you are a professional who sees autism as just another way of being human through a neurodiversity lens, you know that society has shaped what many parents think. And so you know you're delivering bad news to them. So, my actual point and advice is, as professionals, it is our responsibility, before bringing up the possibility of autism, to counter the damage that the societal view has done. So that when you do bring it up, it's not this awful, horrible, catastrophic thing. It just is. Lots of parents feel grief when contrasting their autistic child with a neurotypical child, which is what they ultimately expected, and to be honest, wanted. And then they feel guilt surrounding these feelings because they do still sincerely, deeply love their child. And then the child suffers because children internalize these things. Professionals need to actively take steps so this entire outcome is avoided. Parents are still going to be concerned about their child, but more so because of fears regarding support systems in place and discrimination from others. One more important thing to keep in mind, if you feel the child may be autistic, is that it's likely you're dealing with autistic or at least neurodivergent parents. I'm not going to be discussing that aspect in any more detail, but keep that in mind. All right, so how to actually do this? I have 4 steps. 1, emphasize strengths by highlighting the amazing way their child's brain works and why. 2, humanize self-regulatory behaviors by drawing comparisons between what their child is doing and something specific the parent may do. 3, combat negative autism stereotypes regarding social relationships, like lack of empathy or being self-absorbed or not wanting a social relationship at all. 4, validate parents' feelings of concern, frustration, confusion, etc., because all these feelings come from a place of love and wanting the child to be happy and successful. So, example time. Let's say I get a referral for a child due to a language delay. I meet the child and the family, and this child is very clearly autistic. And the parents don't demonstrate that they have any idea. Maybe it's crossed their mind, but they're in denial, or maybe truly they have no idea. They say the child does this weird thing, always does it, or has always done it, and they don't know why. They could say their child is just being stubborn and isn't going to say words until they have to. Their child starts crying whenever their feet hit the wet grass. Or maybe whenever they don't go the exact same route to the grocery store. Or maybe half the time, parents have no idea why their child is crying. Maybe the child could be in the bathtub for hours and hours and hours and hours, or put one puzzle piece in and out of the same spot repetitively over and over again. Or maybe the child spins around in circles until they get super dizzy and fall down, only to get back up and do it again as long as you let them. Their child doesn't really look at them or actively seek out socialization. Point is, from the parent's perspective, their child is doing things that seem weird and nonsensical and honestly pretty alien. So let's take the example of the child putting a puzzle piece in and out of one spot repetitively. I would orient the parent to what the child is doing, and then I would ask the parent if they ever felt a strong sense of satisfaction when they perhaps parallel park perfectly, or if they managed to fit all of the dishes in the dishwasher in a really pleasing format, and they feel very satisfied. And they probably hope that next time they can do it just like that. I mean, I can even bring up something like bubble wrap and how you want to pop each and every one of those bubbles and how each one is so satisfying, and then at the end it's all flat. You don't want just one bubble unpopped. So likely the parent would have an example of their own or agree with one of mine. I would mention how satisfying and pleasing it must be to their child, just like the examples, to have that piece fit perfectly in a certain spot, and how naturally anyone would want to experience that again and again. All of these things I've mentioned, they're all similar, and these are the underlying need of feeling that sense of satisfaction with like nice placement are things, it's like everyone does it. Everyone feels that way to a certain extent. And then also furthermore, this child is also studying how the puzzle piece fits in the spot. They're studying the space of the board and how things go in and out, just like how mechanics or engineers investigate how pieces fit together to form a whole unit. And that is amazing, and I'd make a big deal about that. That's amazing. That's so cool. Your child's brain is interested and able to do, and is interested in studying this aspect of this toy, and that's awesome. Okay, another example, let's take the spinning. So this is more complicated. First, this one would inevitably require discussion of 1, the sensory system, 2, hyper and hyposensitivity, and how everybody has some degree of that, and how uncomfortable it feels to be hyposensitive, and how you naturally would want to try to find a way to feel better. 3, then orienting the parent to how when the child is spinning, they're seeking vestibular input to regulate. It can take a while for sensory differences to really click for parents, particularly in relation to the more unknown senses like proprioception and vestibular and interoception, just because of how abstract they are and no one talks about them. They don't teach you that in school. Hopefully the OT would be working on this discussion as well, and the SLP and the OT could partner together to talk about phrasing and wording and give each other ideas. Okay, so let's say the parent is at a place that they have a general understanding of hypo and hypersensitivity and regulation. In this situation, I would ask the parent if they or someone they know gets motion sick in car rides. I'd highlight this as an example of hypersensitivity to vestibular input, and that their child has the opposite sensory experience, not feeling it enough. And that's why they're spinning. Furthermore, how awesome is it that their child feels something is off and found this way to regulate? So many adults have no idea how to regulate. So it's just awesome that the child felt something's off and found a way to try to fix that. Sorry, my mouth is dry. I'm leaning my phone on my mug. Okay. Need to get a phone stand. Okay. So let's take this a step further. Let's say the child was spinning and suddenly another parent comes in and tells them to stop and it's time to go to the store. And the child just melts down. So much so that they can't even go to the store. And now the parents are frustrated and annoyed and don't understand why their child had such a significant emotional reaction. I probably wouldn't talk about what had just happened then because everyone's emotions are high, but then the next session, I'd recall how last time the child was spinning, they were forced to suddenly stop and go to the store, and they melted down. I'd validate how hard it must be to see their child in emotional pain and not know what to do. I would ask the parents if they were ever doing something that was just so fun, they almost felt euphoric. So they might answer going on a fun trip or watching an amazing movie. And I would ask them how they would feel if suddenly someone else made them just stop in the middle. I mean, it would be devastating. In fact, their emotions would likely go from a state of feeling euphoric to a state of feeling devastated. So they would get extremely upset, similar to the child. One more example, I'll make it pretty general, something often seen, eye contact and body language. Most people interpret a lack of eye contact to mean a lack of interest or paying attention to the other person. Parents see their child not paying attention to them, being in the opposite side of the room, and take it to mean that their child has no interest in people or really them, and that's heartbreaking. I ask these parents gently their thoughts on their child's social behaviors and validate the feelings that they tell me. However, I know in my head that many autistic people actually report hyper empathy, feeling others' emotions too much. Also, literature at this point has well cited that eye contact is overstimulating and physically painful for many autistic people. So in cases I see children avoiding eye contact and bodily closeness, seeming disinterested in people, I ask the parents if they ever entered a room where they could just tell the vibe was off. The parents might think of something, but if not, I can mention that maybe as a child themselves, they entered the room as their parents had finished fighting. They're sensitive to the energy in the room, and it's highly distressing and uncomfortable. In fact, it's just easier to leave. Maybe maintain an ear's distance from what's going on, but actually looking at others and maintaining closeness is just too emotionally overstimulating. So basically, I outline how their child isn't unfeeling and naturally disinterested in people. They're likely so emotionally overwhelmed or overstimulated by people and all the emotions that people bring, so that it's just way calmer and easier on the child's system to be alone. Okay, another water break. All this talking. Okay. Every step of the way, I'm letting parents know that their feelings are valid. Even if they're exhausted and angry and frustrated and want their child to talk like the other kids and stop doing these weird things, everybody has a right to their feelings. Hopefully, over time, by helping the parent shift their view of the child's behaviors, these feelings lessen because they understand their child more. I do want to make very clear that I'm not saying that every behavior is 100% healthy for the child and family. It is completely possible for the OT to work on rotary sensation, like in the spinning example, so the child feels more naturally regulated, and explain why the child is doing this and draw comparison to things everybody does. If a child is, let's say, licking everything, that's unsanitary, especially in these times. But I still discuss oral sensory seeking, ways we all do it, like gum chewing and nail biting and pencil chewing and chewing on ice, so that it doesn't seem so weird. Speech and OT can still help the child fulfill this sensory need in a healthier way. Same with that meltdown I mentioned earlier. We would work together, the clinician and the family, to have preemptive strategies in place to prepare for a transition from something awesome to something not awesome. In addition to talking through how to work through meltdowns when they inevitably do happen, as to not make it meltdowns just worse for everybody. I'm not rationalizing the child's behaviors with the end goal of saying, it's human, everybody does it, let's leave it. I'm explaining it to them to give a broader context so that the parents and team can decide what and how to address that. Hopefully, stopping harmless stimming behaviors or teaching neurotypical social behaviors will no longer be really focused by the parent. Hopefully, they would be in favor of ways to help the child communicate in whatever modality is most effective for that child, and self-regulation with the help of accommodations. Okay, so I do these 4 steps frequently. Explain many things this way. Connect the child's experiences to experiences everybody has. Could be over several sessions, could be over a few months, maybe even a year. And then, combined with other factors like parenting style and outside life stressors that may be going on, when I feel that the parent gets their child's behaviors. I mentioned that these behaviors are consistent with those that you would see in an autistic child. All parents, in my experience at this point, using these outline strategies, react okay, usually concerned about the next step. I never had a parent yelling or crying or kicking me out or them storming out. We just go on to discuss implications and options. I cannot make the promise that things will go smoothly 100% of the time for me in the future, or for you if you decide to use these strategies. But I mean, in my own experience, it's been positive at best, and just pretty neutral at worst. And this is because I put an extraordinary effort in shaping parents' view of their child's behaviors through education, personal experiences, and time. By focusing on the actual strategy of how to mention autism, professionals are missing the point completely. You can mention autism or help the parent to connect the dots, but if their view of autism is negative and strange and nonsensical, it doesn't matter how they find out. You just informed them of their start of a bad, shameful path where they don't understand the child's behaviors and thus want all the weird things to be eliminated in the hopes of deep down getting a neurotypical child. By first and foremost providing evidence that the way their child acts is completely reasonable, you empower the parent to nurture their child's strengths and defend them against social discrimination. So that's it. If you watched the entirety of this video, thank you so much. I hope it will help you and the families you see when talking about autistic behaviors, and then eventually bringing up a possibility that their child is autistic. Thank you.